The diner was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that makes every clink of a coffee cup sound louder than it should. Old Frank sat at the corner booth, his back straight, his hands wrapped around a chipped white mug. At 81 years old, he carried himself with the same pride he had when he was a young soldier. His faded denim jacket was patched with a few old insignias, reminders of wars long past, memories that never quite left him. People in town knew Frank, not because he bragged about his service, but because he never asked for anything. He simply showed up, tipped generously when he could, and smiled at everyone as though they were family. That morning, though, something darker was brewing. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked a young man in his 20s. Tall, wiry, with tattoos creeping up his neck, he carried the kind of arrogance that filled a room before he even spoke. His leather jacket squeaked as he slid onto a stool at the counter. Without asking, he barked at the waitress, "Get me a coffee. Strong. And don't take all day." The waitress, Linda, gave a nervous smile and hurried to the pot. She'd seen him before, just another drifter with a mean streak. But what no one expected was how quickly his cruelty would unravel the calm of that morning. As Linda set the cup in front of him, the young thug glanced over at Frank. His eyes lingered on the patches on the old veteran's jacket, and something twisted in his expression. "What's this? Another old man pretending he was some kind of hero?" His voice dripped with mockery. Frank didn't respond. He just sipped his coffee, his gaze steady but calm. The young man wasn't satisfied. He stood, walked toward the corner booth, and leaned down close enough for Frank to smell the cigarette smoke on his breath. "I asked you a question, old man. You really think anyone cares about those wars you fought? You're nothing but a relic, wasting space." A hush fell over the diner. Linda froze behind the counter, her hands trembling. A couple of truckers in the back exchanged uneasy glances but didn't move. Frank finally set his mug down, his hands steady. His voice was quiet but carried weight. "Son, respect costs you nothing. But the lack of it can cost you everything." The thug laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Respect? You don't deserve a damn thing." And with that, he did the unthinkable, he slapped Frank across the face. The sound cracked through the diner like a gunshot. Frank's head snapped to the side, but he didn't rise, didn't retaliate. His cheek reddened, but his eyes stayed locked on the thug's, calm, steady, unwavering. That calmness, that refusal to break, only fueled the young man's rage. But before he could strike again, the bell above the door jingled. And in walked a man who looked like a storm-given flesh. Broad-shouldered, leather vest heavy with patches, his beard streaked with gray. Behind him came 5 more men, their presence filling the diner with an air that shifted everything. The emblem on their backs was unmistakable, the skull and wings of the Hell's Angels. The leader's eyes scanned the room, and then they fell on Frank. In a split second, his face softened. "Dad," he said, his voice low but full of shock. The diner gasped. The old veteran, Frank, was the father of a Hell's Angel. The thug who had slapped Frank froze, his bravado slipping. He glanced at the gang members, then back at Frank, realizing too late what he had walked into. Frank's son, Jack, crossed the room in long strides. He dropped to one knee beside his father, his large hand gently brushing the red mark on Frank's cheek. His voice broke, raw with emotion. "Who did this?" Frank didn't answer. He didn't need to. His calm gaze shifted toward the thug, and that was enough. Jack rose slowly, his frame towering, his presence heavy. The air grew so thick it felt like the walls themselves leaned in. He stepped toward the young man, whose cocky grin had long since vanished. "You hit my father?" Jack's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. The thug stammered, I didn't know he was your." "You hit my father." Jack's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. The 5 angels behind him shifted, their boots echoing on the linoleum as they flanked their leader, eyes locked on the thug. The young man backed up until his spine hit the counter. "Look, man, I didn't mean." But Jack didn't move closer. Instead, he glanced back at his father. "What do you want me to do, Dad?" Frank, still sitting with his coffee, finally spoke. His voice was steady, resolute. "Teach him respect, but don't destroy him. He's still young." Jack exhaled, nodding. He turned back to the thug, whose knees were shaking now. In one swift motion, Jack grabbed him by the front of his jacket and slammed him against the counter. The room shook with the force. "You think you're tough slapping an 81-year-old man?" Jack growled. "Let me tell you something about that man you just disrespected. While you're out here pretending to be dangerous, he was out there facing real danger. He bled for this country. He buried friends you're not even worthy to speak of. And you think you can put your hands on him?" The thug whimpered, I didn't know." "That's the problem," Jack cut in, his voice like steel. "You don't know respect. But you're gonna learn." He released the thug, letting him stumble to the floor. Then Jack crouched, staring him dead in the eyes. "You apologize. Right now. Not just with words, mean it. Because if you ever so much as look at him wrong again, you won't just answer to me. You'll answer to all of us." He motioned toward the other angels, whose cold stares made the thug's blood run cold. The young man swallowed hard, then turned to Frank. His voice shook. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean." Frank studied him, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he nodded once. "You've got a lot of growing up to do, son. But today might just be the start, if you let it." The thug nodded furiously, scrambling to his feet. He bolted for the door, the bell jingling wildly as he fled into the street. Silence hung in the diner. Then slowly, conversations picked up again, though whispers carried the weight of what had just happened. Linda, the waitress, brought Frank a fresh cup of coffee, her hands still trembling. "You okay, Frank?" Frank smiled faintly. "I've had worse." Jack sat across from his father, his massive hands folded on the table. He studied the old man with a mixture of pride and guilt. "I should have been here sooner," he said softly. "I should have been around more." Frank shook his head. "You've got your own road to ride, son. I made mine a long time ago. I don't need protection." He paused, his eyes softening. "But it sure feels good to see you walk through that door." Jack's throat tightened. For years, he and his father had lived separate lives, Frank, the disciplined veteran who believed in rules and honor, and Jack, the rebellious son who found family in the outlaw brotherhood of the Hells Angels. They hadn't always seen eye to eye. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Blood had spoken louder than anything. The other angels respectfully took seats at the counter, their presence still commanding but quieter now. Jack leaned in, lowering his voice so only Frank could hear. "I know we've had our differences, Dad. You didn't always understand my choices. But I want you to know, everything I am, everything I've become, it's because of the strength I saw in you." Frank's eyes glistened, though he blinked it away. "And everything I see in you, Jack, is the fire I once carried. Maybe I didn't always say it, but I'm proud of you." Jack swallowed hard, nodding. For a moment, the hardened biker looked like a boy again, just a son who needed his father's approval. The rest of the morning passed with quiet conversations, laughter, and the smell of fresh coffee and bacon. The truckers who had stayed silent earlier walked over to shake Frank's hand before leaving, murmuring words of respect. Linda comped Frank's meal, insisting it was the least she could do. But the true moment of healing came when Jack stood, reached into his vest pocket, and pulled out a small patch, a black rectangle embroidered with the words, "Honor and Loyalty." He slid it across the table to his father. "This is from the club," Jack said. "It doesn't